Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years, pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. Okay, so I decided to do a wrap-up episode on the AI series, which accidentally kind of took me the whole summer to produce. Now, this is the thing about AI and tech, is we incorporate more AI usage into our lives and use it more and more on social media. We seem to be sort of unconsciously holding ourselves up to the standard of robotic technology, the kind of non-human things that don't need breaks, don't have detours on their life path, and don't break down in order to rebuild themselves again. The irony of this summer is not lost on me. I had so many very human detours, stressors, difficult and very human experiences that there was nothing AI could do to fix. Trust me, I asked. On top of that, it was very hot where I live, and I often thought about the impact that AI is having on our global climate crisis. The moral impacts of our use on AI are definitely undeniable and on the top of my mind. So how do we as an industry reckon with this new society-changing technology? Well, that's what I'm here to ask. A ponderance and a summary of what I've learned in 3 parts. Now, before I start my ramble, I have a couple of things to remind you. First, we do have a downloadable PDF discussion guide for this series. If you want to talk about AI and tech with other yoga folks around you, we have some topics to get you started because we cannot deal with what we don't discuss. And second, if you wouldn't mind liking, following, or subscribing to the podcast from wherever you're listening, both I and our algorithmic overlords would be very grateful. This then signals to the algorithm that it should show this podcast to other people like you. And if you want to connect with other yoga pros online, I do run a Facebook group that's called The Future of Yoga Therapy, and you're welcome to join us in conversation there. No need to be a yoga therapist. All yoga pros are welcome. Now, to what I have worked out in regards to AI and tech. Part 1. Okay, let me hold your hands gently when I say this. The idea that AI will never be able to replicate customized yoga protocols for the people who use it is total bullshit. Respectfully. Also, I love you. So many people, seriously, have said to me, AI can never create customized yoga sequences or yoga therapy protocol or training programs that are designed for the exact people who need it. Like, so many people believe this, and I have to tell you that I know for a fact you're wrong. It can already do this, and the minute we hook our watches, Fitbits, or Oura Rings, and other pieces of tech that we use to track our body metrics to an AI bot, it'll be able to build something for us with an accuracy that I think would startle most people. In fact, if you combine any of these metric tracking devices with a very simple prompt, ask me a series of questions about what I'm looking for in a yoga practice and what limitations I might have to that practice, I promise you, friends, AI will be better than we are. To prove my point, let me introduce you to a piece of evidence from another industry that might encourage you to rethink this stance. If you haven't read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers, let me summarize one of the pieces of research for you. The study that he quotes is called Human Decisions and Machine Predictions, and it was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics in 2017. The study was conducted by Sendhil Mullainathan, a professor of computation and behavioral science at the University of Chicago. May I remind you, in 2017. They examined judges' abilities to create and predict defendants' likelihood of committing another crime when making bail decisions. The key finding was that machine learning algorithms trained on large data sets of past cases were significantly better than human judges at predicting which defendants would commit crimes if released on bail or who would fail to appear on their court dates. The study suggested potentially large welfare gains, with policy simulations that they ran showing crime reductions up to 24.7% with no changing in jail rates, or jail rates that are reduced by up to 41.9% with no increase in crime rates. This study was a really great example of Gladwell's broader theme in the book Talking to Strangers about how hard it is for humans to accurately judge strangers, even for professionals like judges who do it as their job. And I will say this because this is a funny part of the story. I remembered reading this part of the book, but I read a lot. And so what I did was I typed into Claude, one of our large language model AIs. I read a book that referenced a study where computers were better predictors of outcomes in a courtroom than humans were. Can you find that study or book? I think it was by Malcolm Gladwell. And it came up with this result in less than 30 seconds. Okay, now let's translate this knowledge to yoga people. Yoga folks are very good at reading people, even new people. And as yoga therapists, if we get the opportunity to meet and talk with people about their hopes and dreams and what they need from a yoga practice, we do get a good sense of them as human beings. But judges also read people as their job, and the stakes for their jobs are a lot higher than the stakes for ours. And a computer was better, like a lot better, at predicting outcomes. So the first thing I've learned in this series is we need to be offering something other than that quote-unquote personalized plan to compete with tech, because AI will be much better than we are. It probably already is. So don't use this news as a reason to give up. Use it as an opportunity to explore what parts about being a yoga professional really light you up, what lights your students up, and what things we can offer the world that cannot be related by tech. One of the things that sticks out to me is the human nervous system's desire to co-regulate with other people. We're pack animals by nature, in spite of every Alpha Bros podcast talking about the lone wolf nature of men. And the thing that I think gets most students to come back when they try a yoga class in the beginning is the fact that they're co-regulating off of everyone else in class. And we know as teachers that we set that energy in the room. Now, maybe you weren't trained in that way to do that on purpose, but it's something that I would assert the vast majority of us do, consciously or not. We regulate the room's energy, and you can't co-regulate off a computer. Tech also cannot make micro-adjustments to people's experiences based on what it observes in real time. Try doing that again, but more slowly this time, and soften your shoulders. Is something that your AI chatbot isn't going to be able to do. So perhaps this brings me to the second part of what I've learned. The thing that I think people really are saying when they say to me, AI can't personalize the practice, is actually AI can't be present with us. Our ability to be present with people is unparalleled. Truly. We train in our classes to be present with ourselves, and this comes to a true professional skill when we train to teach and become yoga therapists. The best yoga teachers that I have ever had are uncompromisingly present with their students when they're teaching, and this is something that AI can't take away. Research on several fronts, including studies on social, organizational, and developmental psychology, as well as neuroscience, all point out that being seen truly as a person by others is a key part of our well-being and health. And this is something that yoga pros can provide in spades, honestly. We're great, if not excellent, at truly sitting with other people. And I also see so many yoga professionals also take on other jobs that require this very specific skill. Think things like death doulas and birth doulas, social workers, other professions that benefit from the ability to truly be with and see other humans. Now, there are bonus points if we can do that without judgment. This is a hard one, even for us, but something that I think we can work on as a skill set that we can offer in the upcoming age of AI. Our humanity is going to be our greatest asset. And part 3 of this is, so will our creativity. I have at times been obsessed, like truly obsessed, with this idea that yoga as a profession is inherently creative. Our ability to work within the framework of what yoga asserts, hopefully using the full scope of yoga, which includes philosophy, lifestyle, movement, breathwork, meditation, is a wildly creative job for us, especially in the context of seeing people in group situations. It is a creative and present job. Both of those things cannot be replicated by any AI or tech. Creativity is how I started my journey, actually, into discussing the yoga industry at large and how we work. And as some very obvious foreshadowing, my next series is going to explore the idea of creativity within the yoga professional space. In my experience, both the practice and the profession allow for huge amounts of creativity, which is something rarely discussed in forums or online when we talk about yoga teaching. In fact, those places are really often the antithesis of creative teaching or thought. They're really plagued with those what poses do you use for insert melody types questions and prescriptive sort of suggestions from the respondents. And I find it incredibly ironic that we strip the creativity out of the discussion of yoga so often when we're among other professionals. And that's one thing that AI can never come close to competing with us, our creative process. AI is, by design, at best, a skilled forger of original thought. And while it can be useful and certainly can make us more efficient in some of our work, the nature of the program is to be a copycat of other people's work. I would be incredibly remiss if I didn't also ask AI to answer this question for me. And I made a guide for you all, if you want to read it, about what AI thinks will be the most effective things that we as yoga professionals can compete with it on in the coming 10 years. The most notable thing that all 3 LLMs that I asked, now remember those are large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Grok, Gemini from Google's another one, they all said community. The other things it mentioned were things like empathy and presence, with ChatGPT agreeing with everything that I've asserted so far here, excluding my comments on creativity. Claude mentioned trauma-informed responsive teaching, which was unique as an answer to that model. And Grok added authenticity and service as ways that humans excel over AI models. Like I said, you can see the full results of what AI said about our competing with it in the show notes. There are a couple of final notes that I want to mention to all of you listening as I wrap up this series. These are me sending you a gentle reminder and a very strong suggestion, and they're both kind of connected to each other. As we enter this new age of AI, which will honestly change us on a societal level at what will likely be the quickest rate of any technological advance in human history, I want to encourage you to use AI with caution. First, I need you to treat AI like you would be getting an estimate for replacing brakes on your car or finding someone to fix your water heater. If you've never heard of the advice, the rule of 3, that is the idea that you are going to get 3 different estimates, ideas, thoughts on work for anything. Cars, plumbing, surgery, software, anything. And I want you to use it here too. When you ask one of these AI models a question, I want you to strongly encourage you to ask other models the same question. I know you're going to be amazed, first of all, at how different these models can be. And also, you're going to start to find discrepancies in your answers. These models, they absolutely make stuff up. And you'll start to discern this when you use them enough and compare them to each other. That isn't to say that the answers that you receive from AI aren't valuable or valid. But please make sure that you're doing your due diligence in vetting all of your answers that you receive. Ask more than one model. Compare answers. Allow the models to help you think, not to think for you. That's my gentle reminder. And finally, please know that some of these models, ChatGPT specifically, which right now, that's OpenAI's large language model, is the most popular AI being used. ChatGPT is programmed for likability. Let me phrase that for you a different way. It is programmed to give you answers that make you like it. It is programmed to validate you, even if you're full of shit. Sometimes this is helpful. Sometimes you need someone or something to sort of like validate what's going on in your brain, but you will need to interact with these models, especially ChatGPT, in a way that forces it to take an objective or wide lens stance. So if your model sounds like your girly pop bestie, be suspicious. Ask it to take the opposite viewpoint. Ask it for objective opinions. Push it further to talk to you more like a computer, which it is, and less like a human. If you need validation, go to your best friend. If you need something to do high-level research at a quick rate, ask an AI model and then vet everything that AI model tells you separately. Look, I am decidedly and undeniably pro-tech. I see the benefits, especially in regards to accessibility and information distribution, but use it with a lens of skepticism and as an addition to your own thinking, not as a substitute for it. I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to all of my guests on this series. They were incredible. Jay Brown, Justin D'Angelo, Kimberly Searle, Melissa Adelia Calasanz, and Ron Bacht, and Mandy King. Mandy is also contributing this month to my monthly newsletter, adding a bit of writing on philosophy and yoga to the mix. Sign up for that in my resources section of the show notes. Now, up next week, I am headed into like a series of continuing conversations based on previous series that I did on the podcast. The first one of those might be honestly my most interesting and potentially controversial podcast of this year. It is the first someone to come on the podcast who actually doesn't work in yoga. It is my friend Chris Mall, and Chris is coming on to talk about licensure because he's an expert at it. And you will not want to miss this. I asked Chris all of the messy questions about yoga, the yoga profession, yoga therapy, and licensure, and we get into it. Until then, I do want to pause here at the end and say thank you to my good friend and fellow podcaster Shannon Crow, who is pausing her podcast, The Connected Yoga Teacher. I want to thank her for all of her work and service in the industry. I know that she's made an impact for all of us, and I, for one, am so proud of her, and I'm proud to call her my friend. Now, thank you for listening, folks. Let's go get to work, and I'll catch you around the water cooler next time.